You guys remember Robert Jeffress, right? Super homophobic, extreme right-wing pastor who mixed politics into his sermons so much that he actually got in legal trouble for it. That's genuinely hard to do. You can't endorse a political candidate from the pulpit, and he endorsed Mike Pence for a 2024 run. You know, after Trump finishes his second term. Glad that didn't happen. The worst consequence he can face from it is losing his tax-exempt status anyways, and last I checked, it didn't even get that far. Anyways, he's back in the news for an odd clip he put out. He went on Jim Bakker's show the other day and had this to say.
We're also going to work in heaven. Now, that may even sound more like hell to some people, working in heaven. But remember, God created us to be workers. Work was a gift from God before the fall of Adam and Eve. God meant for us to find fulfillment in our work. He's a worker. He created us to be workers. But in heaven, the new heaven and the new earth, all of the things that drain the joy out of our work, bodies that grow tired, strained relationships, government regulations, all those things will be removed, and we're going to enjoy work like God intended us to enjoy.
Fascinating. So we'll be working in heaven. I wonder where he got that idea. If we're actually taking the story seriously, which I don't see why we should, but if we are, Adam and Eve's only job was to name the animals, right? They just sat around all day eating fruit and hanging out with the animals. What was their job? Different denominations have different views of heaven. That's because the Bible says almost nothing about what heaven is like, and hell isn't even in the Bible. References to it were added centuries later, and our modern view of hell is largely formed out by the book Divine Comedy, written by Dante, in a chapter titled Inferno. The chapter itself is commonly referred to as Dante's Inferno. That's where we got our modern perspective on hell, not from the Bible. So everything Jeffress said in here is completely fabricated, made up. I always got the impression heaven would be different for everybody. Whatever would make you happy, that's what heaven would be. Presbyterians believe that heaven is where you merge with God. You cease being you and become one with him. Jehovah's Witnesses believe only 144,000 people go to heaven to rule as kings and priests alongside Jesus. They view it as a physical location in the clouds where they can look down on and judge us. Don't even get me started on the Mormon viewpoint. The point is, when there's a lot of denominational deviation like this, it means the Bible's probably really vague on that subject, and people should refrain from making shit up. But you know Robert Jeffress, that's his specialty. Robin Bullock has a really interesting explanation for why he was wrong about Trump being president again. We had Kat Kerr and Johnny Enlow and a bunch of other self-proclaimed prophets telling us that Trump won and God was going to reinstate him as president on March 4th. So I wondered, how are they going to explain this one? Well, we're looking at Johnny Enlow's response to his claims about March 4th in a minute, but this is Robin Bullock's. Listen to this.
What you need to do now, the stage is set. Everything is set. But you're going to have to pray for the rightful president, whether he wants to walk back into this or not. You must pray that he wants to do it, because God won't make him do anything. Is it his will? Yes. Is he the president? Yes. That's why he could just walk right back in, and God will supernaturally move things out of the way. But you need to pray for encouragement.
So it sounds to me like he's saying that God will supernaturally move things out of the way. He'll move Biden right out of the White House as soon as Trump is ready to take the role back. So Trump is the only hang-up here. All he has to do is walk into the White House and take it over, and that's it. But the reason Robin Bullock was wrong about March 4th is because Trump chose not to do it, and God doesn't force anybody to do anything. Absolutely fascinating. I knew we'd see some interesting explanations, but this is a humdinger. You guys remember Johnny Enlow, right? He's one of the prophets who claimed Trump would be re-inaugurated on March 4th to take over in place of Biden. He said Trump was chosen by God to be president. He even went as far as to say that God usually lets us vote for president, but this time around he isn't letting us pick. He's picking the president for us, and the guy he picked was Trump.
And the Lord, it was like, he's like, I'm really not interested in your all's vote this time. I'm doing it. I usually give you all that option. This time I'm not. This is a rescue operation from heaven. This is a moment of the ages. This will go down. This time period will go down as a before and after AD, but BC AD, depending on what terminology you use now.
Well, he's got a new angle. This is his explanation for why Trump still isn't president, like he prophesied would happen on January 20th, and when that failed, March 4th. Check this out.
Just need to know there is going to be no buckling
no backing off from me, because this is something he is saying. He is saying. That's why I'm emphasizing, even because sometimes we can get into talking about what's going on behind the scenes. I think a whole lot going on behind the scenes. I could have a 30-minute conversation about what I think is really going on there. I'll just say I think we have two presidents. Essentially, one's over the corporation, one's over the republic. One has the essential machinery of the economy and the essential machinery of the military, and one has things to do with other things. That you can say what's left, a little niche there.
So there you go. The original claim was that the U.S. stopped being a republic and became a corporation after the Civil War. Every president after that was the president of the corporation, and God was going to install Trump as the first president of the republic in like 150 years, since the Civil War ended. So his claim is that Trump was inaugurated secretly as the president of the republic, and Biden remains president of the corporation. Trump controls some levers of power, and Biden controls others. But it's better this way, according to Enlow. It means Trump won't get any of the hate that comes with being in the public eye. It means Trump gets to be president with none of the downsides. There you go. Prophecy fulfilled. Enlow can explain to everybody that he was right all along. That's pretty convenient, right? Pat Robertson is an interesting character. He started out saying that Trump was absolutely going to win, and God would come in and save us from the socialism of AOC and Bernie Sanders. After the election, he had a complete meltdown on air, making all the same claims we've heard from the far right since the election ended. Then he came out and said, you know what? Trump lost. He has to accept it. He was even a little critical of Trump, surprisingly. But now he's decided it's a good time to start leveling baseless attacks at Biden. Of course. Listen to this.
Without question, he is intellectually impaired. He's got senile dementia, and we have him as our president. So you ask yourself, who's running the show?
Intellectually impaired. Fascinating. This coming from Pat Robertson. This is the exact same accusation that was leveled at Trump, except there was actual hard evidence to back it up in that case. Psychologists coming out and explaining what they saw happening to Trump's brain in his public addresses. Things like mispronouncing words regularly, having really slow days, being zippier and sharper in the mornings and slower at night, that kind of thing. There is currently no evidence to suggest that Biden suffers from Alzheimer's or dementia or any of that in any form. And that rule about not diagnosing people from their public addresses, that's called the Goldwater rule. And it isn't an ethics violation. It was made up by politicians to defend their extreme right conservative candidate Barry Goldwater. It isn't a part of psychology. Psychologists are perfectly free to point out red flags they see from politicians and still be within ethical bounds. But why should I take the word of a religious extremist like Pat Robertson? If licensed and well-known psychologists express concern over Biden, I'll listen. I haven't heard a word about it so far from the scientific community, unlike with Trump. Only the extreme right religious community.